What if I told you that Lux wasn't the only deck in Riftbound that could win on turn 5? You probably actually would not be surprised at all, given the nature of the videos that I've made thus far, et cetera, et cetera. But Jayce clearly has infinites. I think there have been many videos about the various ways to get into infinites. But what I want to present to you today is, in my opinion, one of the most distilled versions of the Jayce Infinite with a Lux-like alternate combo. So, what does that look like? And then what does the gameplay look like accompanying it? And during that gameplay, instead of actually playing against another person, let's be frank, the deck is solitaire. The same way that Lux is solitaire. It doesn't matter what my opponent does. I'm just going to talk you through my thoughts on the deck while showing you gameplay that you can watch as I talk. So without further ado, I'm going to walk you through the deck profile, and then you're going to get to see me do a solitaire game where I go infinite on turn 5 and sort of my thoughts about everything. Let's go through the deck profile. First, obviously, we have Jayce as our legend. Not really surprising. The chosen champion is this Jayce Brilliant Inventor. I play him maybe 10% of the time, but in a pinch, if you really need to untap something specific, or if you already have him out, if you don't have something better to do for whatever reason, you can untap something by playing like a seal for free. So, potentially useful. But getting into the meat and potatoes of it, we have the characters or the the units. We have Echo, 3 copies of Echo, self-explanatory. But basically, when you sack Echo, you can usually float a bunch of mana or at least untap all your runes to do more stuff to draw more cards. So that's a big one. It's Echo here. Another set of 3 with don't mind the card back. I don't have the third one yet from it being shipped in. Is Applied Researchers. If you've seen any other videos on Lux Infinite or Mel or a lot of the other like Spellslinger decks, you'll know that this card is absolutely insane. But basically, it's a 4 energy, 0 power. So you play it out. And then either the same turn or a later turn, you can empower it for just 3 energy, and it reduces the cost of your spells by 1 and a power. 1 energy and 1 power to a minimum of 1. Basically, it means that your progress day is just 5 energy, no power. If you get multiple of these out, it's just kind of like, even better, but you really only need 1. It makes your dredge ups 1 and then 1 from the trash because the flow is still casting a spell. The only card it doesn't really function perfectly with is Downstage Dramatics. I still play it for the loop to simplify the loop at the end, which you'll see in the gameplay, but it reduces Downstage only by 1 because the repeat cost is not included in this. But we have 3 of those so that you can hopefully find at least one of them pretty early on. And then we're really only running 3 other units in the main. We run 1 Malzahar, which I know kind of sounds crazy, but we run 1 Heimerdinger because it's going to pull double duty. It's a second Malzahar when we need 2 Malzahar, and it is a Renata Glask. And we don't ever have to go to a battlefield because Heimerdinger can copy Renata's score a point ability without having to be at a battlefield because it doesn't read the bottom part of that text. So Heimerdinger, very important card here. Really, I would only play it down once you are into your loop and it's clear that your opponent has no way of stopping you. If it gets killed, there's ways to get it back, but it's not ideal. Those are all the units, right? Not a lot. So let's go to the gear because Jayce untaps gear. So how do we break that? How do we take advantage of that? Well, 3 of the new Plateworm eggs. Plateworm egg, it enters exhausted. It reaction taps for 1, but you can empower it for 1 to have it tap for 2 instead. This is one that I try to get down as early as possible, try to empower it early. Usually there's turns where if you have 5, you can play it for 3. It enters exhausted, tap Jayce for 1 to untap the egg, and then pay 1 and tap this to empower it. So on the next turn, you won't have 7 energy, you'll have 9 energy to work with. So just sort of adds up over time. But yeah, 3 of these, very important. We're also playing 3 seals. The seal is particularly important as you make your way through the mid game and get into a loop. Once you start sacrificing Echo for power, you don't really need them anymore, but you do want them so that you're not going too far down on runes as you're playing things like Time Warp or as you're playing maybe an Echo at some point during the game. So I put 3 of them in here. Odds are if you find 1, maybe 2, that's like about it. Once you find your 3rd one, at that point, you're good. But you want to find hopefully 1 early-ish. And then really it's just 2 more gear. We only have 1 copy in the main of Garbage Grabber. This lets you recycle 3 cards from your trash by paying 1 and tapping it. And then once you recycle 3, you also draw a card. So there's many instances in sort of that mid-game where your hand might be a bit out of draw cards, but you know that there's probably more in the deck. This gets you out of a pickle so often because you'll recycle a couple of the draw cards you played earlier, like Progress Day, maybe an Acceleration Gate, and then you'll draw, and oftentimes you'll draw into another draw card. So big lifesaver. And then we have 1 copy of Questionable Tome for the same idea as Garbage Grabber. You just want something that you can untap either with Jayce or with Acceleration Gate that you can then use to draw a card. Now, you have to tap it to empower it, so you have to play it, tap it, empower it, untap it, pay 1, tap it again, disempower it to draw 1. It's a lot of hoops to jump through, but sometimes your hand is just dead, and that's the only way you can draw a card, and that's what gets you out of it. So those are all the gear we're playing. Now, to get to the meat and potatoes of the deck, the crazy spells. So we play 3 copies of Mobilize. I know a lot of decks are playing things like Energy Conduit. I'm not particularly a fan because, weirdly, I think I empowered Jayce about half the times that I've, solitaired this. And then the other half, including the video you're going to see, I didn't even bother empowering Jayce ever because the pay 2 energy, 2 power just never felt like it was necessary, or it never felt like the right thing to do. And so if you don't have that, the energy conduits are just like you're paying 3 to tap for 1 later, and you never want to untap those. You want to untap the eggs instead. So I'm playing this because it channels runes early, and late game, if you have a research route, it's a stupefy, basically. It's a pay 1, draw 1. So I love 3 of these. We have 1 copy of Catalyst of Aeons in here. Similar idea to Mobilize. You could run more of these. You could run none of these. This one is a big flex spot. But, I've been liking it. And then we're running 3 stupefies. So as you can see here, that's 7 cards already that situationally, or all the time with stupefy, draw you cards. And stupefy, you don't care if you stupefy anything on the board. There needs to be a target, but otherwise it won't ever matter. It's just a pay 1, draw 1. Then you have 3 copies of Dredge Up. As I said earlier, this card is insane because once you have applied researchers out, you're paying 1 to draw and then 1 from the trash to draw. So it's basically a double stupefy on 1 card. But even in the early game, if you don't got anything else to do and you just have 2 energy to work with on turn 1, just pay it, draw a card. It's in the trash. It's there for later. So key is to just keep track of when you're playing through your turns if you have a Dredge Up in trash. Because sometimes you might have a dead hand, but you're like, oh, shoot, I've got like 2 or 3 Dredge Ups in there, and then you're fine. 3, Downstage Dramatics. Now, you could play Consult the Past instead, because I have almost always found that I am paying 3 or 4, 3 if applied researchers out, or 4 just naturally, for this card. That said, I still like the modality of repeat or not. You might be in a situation where you really just want to draw 1 card, and if you draw 2, you burn out or something. So I would stick with this from a modality perspective. But, if you really want, you could run Consult the Past. If you don't own any, you could run, and, it probably is fine 90% of the time. MVP of this deck and Lux and every combo deck is Progress Day. With the applied researchers, as we said, it's basically pay 5, draw 4. Very good. If you somehow get 2 of these out, it's pay 4, draw 4. It's crazy. So we have 3 Progress Days. We have 3 Acceleration Gates. And this is also an MVP of the deck. This makes the deck go crazy, legitimately, because you get 1 researcher online, and it isn't pay 3 and a power. It's just pay 2. When you get to Acceleration Gate paying 2 only, and you never have to pay the power, that's what gets you into that easy infinite energy, infinite power loop. Because you're making 2 with Echo each time you sack 1. You play 2 Echoes, that's net 2 energy positive every single loop, 2 power positive. So, an Acceleration Gate can untap for units, gear, or runes. So there's many instances where, like, early, you don't really need to untap a Malzahar and another unit. You just untap Malzahar, an egg, and 2 runes instead. So depending on what you need in the moment, that's, I think, the biggest learning curve for this, is knowing when to play it, when to untap, and when to hold them. And then finally, this card is so important for the deck actually being viable, in my opinion, because you really cannot win in 5 turns without taking extra turns on that 5th turn. There is just no universe in which you have enough set up that you can do it all by the 5th turn. So 3 time warps, absolutely essential. If you get these in your opening hand, do not mulligan them. Mathematically, I think almost always, mathematically, you will need access to all 3 time warps to win the game by turn 5. So if you bottom deck one of them, even though it's a 10 cost, 4 power spell, if you bottom deck one of them, that means it's the last card you're going to have to get to. If you don't have that 1 time warp, you probably can't get to that card. So it's like you have to keep them. That's the awkward part about this card, is if it's in your opening hand, you have to keep them. But that is the main deck. In terms of what you could play for battlefields, actually, let's go through that first. Now, let's go over battlefields. So you have 2 battlefields that I think are very important. You have Paper Tree and Forgotten Monument. I am almost positive that if you are going, what is it, first? If you don't, okay. I think in the beginning of the game, the very first battlefield you probably want to play blind is Paper Tree. Because you may go first, you may go second, but I think it's going to benefit you regardless. Then, if you happen to, I believe, win, and you get to choose to go first, I think you actually want to play Forgotten Monument. And you want to play it with a card that I would sideboard in, and that card is Otterpuss. So, feels like a weird sideboard, but if you think about it, this card, you have 3 of them in the deck, and then if you find them early, you basically can prevent your opponent from scoring on their first or second turn entirely. Now, granted, that's usually only 1 point, but that 1 point difference means that they score 2 on their 3rd turn, 2 on their 4th turn, 2 on their 5th turn. So they're at 6. And if you go first, that means you will actually have 6 turns to try to win the game instead of 5. So going first, you can give yourself a slight advantage by playing 3 copies of Otterpuss and Forgotten Monument and preventing your opponent from scoring any points until their 3rd turn. That 1 point does theoretically matter, and if you can go to 6 turns in this deck, if you can make it there, I think that you probably, assuming no interaction, you can get to the loop in 6 turns 90% of the time. I truly believe. So that is your blind, and then you're going first if you have the choice. And then the last one I just have as Rockfall Path. Unit can't be played here. Stops some shenanigans like ambush or sneaky deckhand, anything where somebody might be able to just throw something down there, an Ocean Drake maybe. I think this is a flex spot in terms of your battlefield, but we talked about winning in 5 turns. We've talked about what you can do to force your opponent to give you a 6th turn. But then the question is, what else are you going to side in? Now, the other half of the combo is Trinity Force and Unchecked Power. If you, say, win or lose, whatever, if you win the first game and your opponent is going to choose to go first, going second is extremely difficult, I think, in this matchup. Because in theory, they, I think, can win before you actually have a 5th turn, which is very hard. And I think if you end up knowing you're going to go second, I think you want to side in the Trinity Force Unchecked Power and then use Trinity Force to hold and score extra points with your time warps. So if you can find 1 or 2 of these and you can get your echoes to a battlefield or Otterpuss or whatever, if you can get something to a battlefield on those turns, you'll probably be in a good spot to then play 2 time warps and win the game from there. So you do want to change up your strategy. That is what this is for. Similar to the way that Lux has a version that goes infinite loop, and Lux has a version that makes infinite recruits and wins from there. So this is your alternate. In terms of all of the other options, I'm currently having a second copy of Garbage Grabber. Maybe if my opponent is clearly running a lot of Gear Hate, which is very likely, you want to throw this in. Same with a second copy of Malzahar. Sometimes there are situations where your opponent can target the back line. You want to try to get Malzahar down not just on your last turn, but maybe a turn before, so he'll just untap naturally. And if you're worried about that, a second copy is always good. And then finally, we have 2 copies of Mel in the sideboard, untested, but counter spells while you're trying to combo are a big problem. You have a ton of draw spells, but there are situations where if they counter, say, your progress day, when you're trying to draw through the last few cards of your deck, it can be very annoying. I don't know the likelihood that you will have enough energy to play this and empower it all just to stop your opponent countering you, but worth exploring. So that's the current side deck, and that is the deck. All right, so as I said before, this is going to be a solitaire style gameplay video. The reason being is this deck doesn't really, the main version, run any interaction of any kind. The whole idea behind the deck is that you are going to just chill in your base, play cards from your hands. In theory, you will win the game by never going to a battlefield and technically outside of Stupefy, never interacting with any of your opponent's units or runes or gear or anything. In that respect, it is, frankly, not a very fun idea of a deck to play. But the dice that I'm putting there in the top right corner is really my turn counter. So the assumptions that I'm making going into this is that I will have to win by my 5th turn. Looking at this hand here, I really don't want to bottom deck Heimer necessarily, but that tome I don't really need, so just choosing to bottom deck and being rewarded with a Mobilize. Haha, huzzah. So starting off here, I have a choice between Mobilize and Dredge Up, but I think more runes early is better. I can play the Dredge Up later. I can always draw later. So that's turn 1, pretty straightforward. Turn 2, I have 5. This would be a perfect turn for a Plateworm Egg, but I don't have access to that. So instead, I'm going to spend the least amount of mana looking for anything like an Applied Researcher. Don't find it, so you just got to play the Dredge Up, another Dredge Up, playing this over the Downstage Dramatics because that will draw me 2 later if I'm willing to spend extra energy. So that's it. Just drawing a few cards. Going into turn 3, I really don't have a very good setup, frankly. But because of the Mobilize, I can now play an Applied Researcher and choose to empower it all on the same turn. Now, clearly this creates potential for opponent interaction, right? This deck is very susceptible to interaction. If your opponent plays a Starcross now, that would be very annoying. But again, I'm just assuming that I'm just trying to win on turn 5. And you can recover from things like a Starcrossed. You just have to play a little differently. But the question is, can you even win? So I'm just going to start by paying the least amount of energy, and that is by playing my Dredge Up. And then I'm going to play a Stupefy to draw 1, tap another, play another Dredge Up to draw another card. So pay 3, draw 3, quite good. But we really do need to start setting up for that 5th turn here. So we're going to downstage and hope that we find something, and we do. Luckily, finally find a Plateworm Egg. Don't have any energy to do anything with it, but we can at least get it down. And we know that we have a Time Warp in hand for the next turn. So from my perspective, what that means is worst case scenario, I just Time Warp. Yeah, you go down a little bit on runes, but you just do what you can while you're empowering the egg. So here you might be tempted to play a Progress Day. But the truth is, I will not have enough energy to do Progress Day and Time Warp probably. So I'm going to empower that, going to recycle 1. I'm going to get a seal down, which is fine. I can use that power for this Time Warp. And at this point, I'm just sort of counting my energy to say, like, okay, I know my Time Warp is going to cost 9 and 3. So I am going to preemptively pay. So I'm going to tap. Yeah, I'm deciding, like, can I even do anything else here? And the answer is probably no. Everything's kind of expensive. So I think I'm just going to end up preemptively paying for the Time Warp. It banishes itself, and I have to recycle 2 more because I paid 1 blue with the seal. And at this point, like, I could tap Jayce to untap the egg, but it doesn't matter. So we are on turn 5. I did play a Time Warp, and I will go back up. I am, I believe, net positive. I mean, I went down a couple of runes there, but now I find the Malzahar. This is incredibly important because it can untap on following turns. And I'm choosing here to play this Echo, knowing that I can play an Acceleration Gate here for just 2. And that will allow me to untap Malzahar, the Egg, and probably 2 runes, which is a big deal. So this is a great example of, yeah, I'm like, do I need the Insight? Maybe, but I'm going to make energy. I'm going to make power with this Echo Sacrifice. So I think I'm debating, like, do I actually want the power from the seal or not? So we're going to go ahead, sack the Echo here, float 3 energy, and get 2 power as well. So that's what the other dice are indicating. So the time counter, it's staying on 5. It's not going to change, but yeah. This is where the deck kind of gets interesting / dicey, right? I have all of this energy. I am going to be looking probably for a way to get into a Time Warp here. So I'm just going to say, okay, well, I've got 3 floating, 4, 5, and I'm just going to try to progress day my way into another Time Warp. So 3, there it is. Okay. So we find another Time Warp, luckily, because there's really not too much more we can do at this point. There's still far too much of the deck that we have to draw through. We had to do a little bit of setup here, playing the Malzahar and untapping it with the Acceleration Gate. So I think you maybe try to cut your losses here. I'm just doing the math preemptively. I'm like, okay, I'm going to float 2, pay 1, tap the Jayce. Oh, wrong Jayce. Tap the Jayce to untap and float another 2. So I'll have 4 energy to work with there, and 2 power. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 1. I actually swap out this rune later because I'm like, wait a minute, I can do that with one of the tapped runes. It's fine. So I'm going to preemptively play the Time Warp here. You could theoretically change the order of things, but I have 2 left, and I know that there are 3 runes now in my rune deck, so I probably want to play the Mobilize just to get back to 12 on the following turn. The more you can start with when you're doing your Echoes, the better, obviously. So at this point, I only have 2. I only have 1 left. It's really not worth doing anything else. So at this point, I just go to another turn. So I played 2 Time Warps. We have 12 runes. We have Malzahar untapped. So at this point, and then we top deck the next Time Warp. So at this point, I think I'm in a pretty good spot. I just need to make sure I keep drawing into more draw cards to churn through the deck, because there is 1 Echo at the bottom, and then soon there will be a 3rd Echo. So I think I'm debating here whether or not I want to play a Heimerdinger, but I think I'm like, I don't want to put a rune back in my rune deck to do that. So probably I am just going to maybe draw some cards here and then use Malzahar to get me some floating power to work with. So luckily we did find some draw here. Mobilize will be a draw card. Dredge Up is a great draw card there. I could play the draw cards and then sack Echo, or vice versa. It actually doesn't matter in terms of the amount of energy you have. It's the same amount of energy whichever way you want to spend it. So I like to, I think, use the runes ahead of time because maybe I'll draw something a little different. But at this point, I don't really think there's a reason to play anything else. With the researchers online, I want to save the downstage dramatics and things instead of just paying 2 to draw 1. So sacking the Malzahar, getting a bunch of extra energy, a bunch by 2. 2 extra energy and untapping. So we have 2 energy, 2 power. And at this point, you know, the biggest bottleneck in the mid game here really does come down to running out of draw cards. So I'm going to play a seal. Having more online is always good. And I know that, like, yes, I've got another Echo. I could play it down, but it's not really the right time, most likely, to play a second Acceleration Gate. So I think I'm just going to preemptively here play that Time Warp and see what we want to do. Tapping the wrong Jayce. I usually put my legends on the left side. So we got 3, 4. Yeah. So I'm going to play the Time Warp preemptively and then work with whatever I have left, because I know that I need to, play the Time Warp regardless. That's the biggest problem is sometimes you'll play cards that you draw more and then you forget that you needed all that extra power or energy to play a Time Warp. And yeah, so I feel comfortable going down here. One more rune because I'm going to get those 2 when they untap. Then we have exactly 3 left over for a downstage to draw 2. Luckily, we draw into another downstage dramatic, so we have a little bit more draw. And we do have, I believe, a dredge up in the trash. So there's some draw available to us. We're going to go to the last extra turn. So this is it. This is do or die. We've got Heimerdinger and Malzahar untapped, 2 seals, an empowered Plateworm Egg, and an empowered Researcher, 12 runes. So, and we're probably more than halfway through the deck at least. So I think we just start by playing an Echo, knowing that we're going to need to start sacrificing them. But this is the last one until we get to the end of the deck. So this is very important that we find our way into draw and we find our way through the deck here. Because if we don't, we will run out of energy. So I'm just playing a few cards down here that I know I want down. And then I think I'm debating, do I Garbage Grabber between the Echoes so that I don't have to draw into 3 Echoes in a row at the bottom? So I think we're going to dredge up there. And so I guess we're just fine having all 3 Echoes at the bottom before we Garbage Grabber. So we're just going to untap. We float 1 and 2 power. I wonder if I even forget that. Yeah, we have 1 and 2 power to work with now. But Heimerdinger is, theoretically you could play Heimerdinger to use Garbage Grabber's ability too, or to use Jayce. But for now, I am just going to, I might Garbage Grabber. I'm probably looking to see if I have another dredge up in there. And I think this is where, if you cannot use your dredge ups immediately, it's sometimes good to save them. But yeah. Importantly, with the Garbage Grabbers, you do want to make sure you're putting back draw cards and acceleration gates because you will need them. I prioritize in the getting through the deck, putting the progress days back because that is just 1 card that can draw you through all the rest of the cards when you draw through your deck. Luckily, we did draw 1 more draw card in that Stupefy to draw another, but pretty awkward spot now. We have all of this energy, all of these runes, and not a lot of ways to draw. We have a downstage and we have a catalyst. So we're going to draw 2 here and hope. And nothing. So this was me debating to use the seal, or if I had to play Jayce to say untap Garbage Grabber or something, then I can play the seal to untap something again. So we're choosing to untap the Plateworm Egg, tap it to float 2. So I believe I have 2 floating. Oh, no, that was to empower the Plateworm Egg. Okay. So now the second Plateworm Egg is empowered. So if I get to untapping a bunch of things with my acceleration gates, which looks like is what I'm doing here, I'm going to use that 2 floating to acceleration gate, untap Malzahar, Plateworm Egg, probably the Garbage Grabber and another rune, because I might have to Garbage Grabber again just to draw. This is where the hands get really awkward, is that you're like, the best draw card I have in my hand, the best draw card I have in my hand is a Catalyst of Aeons for 3. Pay 3 to draw 1 is quite bad. But yeah, just floating 4 here. We're going to Catalyst, go down to 1, draw a card. It is a progress day, so saves our butt a little bit, but we do have the awkward bit of how much do we actually have left? I have enough to progress day and acceleration gate, which I believe at this point would get me into another Echo if I find my way through it. So that's 5. Progress day, draw 4. Hope we find an Echo. There we go. So we found all 3 of those Echoes. That means we know the last 3 cards in our deck are an acceleration gate, a progress day, and a downstage dramatics. We can acceleration gate the 2 empowered Plateworm Eggs and a rune, and another rune just for the sake of it. But that gives us 6 energy to work with, which is exactly what we need to start playing these Echoes down. And at this point, it's basically over. Once you get to a state where you have the cards that you need in your hand, you're basically through the deck where you know every card that you're going to draw is going to draw you more cards. It becomes very easy to get into the loop. It's really that middle area where you're running out of your actual draw cards. But the loop, which I will demonstrate in a second, because I'll eventually stop counting power and energy because it becomes apparent that I can make, infinite energy and power, assuming the loop continues. The main part of the loop is it comprises 2 echoes, Malzahar, Heimerdinger, and then 3 downstage dramatics, one of them in the trash, and an acceleration gate that you are looping. So when we get to it, I'll show you. But here I'm just tapping the questionable tome to empower it, and then tapping the garbage grabber to put more acceleration gates, and then probably some of the downstage dramatics into the deck. So I guess I'm choosing to prioritize here acceleration gates. It's fine because I also chose to put a progress day in. But otherwise, you'd want 2 downstage dramatics. I draw 1. I was hoping to draw either the progress day or the downstage dramatics with that. So this is truly the awkward spot. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, I can sack the Echo and get a bunch of energy, but like to what end, right? Like this is a feels bad because you are almost out of everything. I have 1 acceleration gate, meaning I can untap the garbage grabber and the questionable tome to draw, which is exactly what we're going to do, right? Untap the Heimerdinger and the Malzahar. That's priority number 1. Untap garbage grabber and tome. I have plenty of energy. And so I'm just going to pay 1, and this questionable tome coming in clutch, getting me to another draw 2, which draws me into the progress day I put on the bottom, which draws me into the other acceleration gates and the progress day. So at this point, I feel very confident we can get through the deck. I check 4 cards. It's progress day time. So long as I have enough energy to progress day and echo, which I do, then we are golden. But yeah, like I said, the loop is double echo and the 2 cards, and then eventually you win with the Renata. But the main issues with the deck are always going to be things like interaction, counters, bounce spells, kill spells in the base. Because you are never going to a battlefield, you're never actually opening your opponent an opportunity for action speed windows. So the arguments that your opponent can play Ride the Wind and score an extra point are actually quite moot. If you never go to a battlefield, they can't play Ride the Wind on your turn. They can't score an extra point on your turn. Now, New Diana does play the Swain, which can score an extra point. So any deck that can consistently score an extra point on their own turn, that is a deck to be very concerned about, because it really does rely on your opponent not being able to score extra, by your opponent forcing themselves to give you that 5th turn, right? But if they do give you the 5th turn, and this deck very much can brick, you can have hands that you just run out of draw and you have to sit a whole turn out, and then that's really the end of the game. And so this is me just sort of demonstrating the double downstage acceleration gate loop. I have a downstage dramatics in hand. It's going to draw me a card. I will play the progress day in this instance just to sort of get into the loop. But yeah, in essence, talk also about bans, right? Like, I don't think that this deck is necessarily so top tier, but I think Echo is a crazy card. And I think the fact that Echo enables this, and the fact that this gameplay style, you're watching this, it's entirely solitaire. I'm effectively not playing Riftbound. It's fun. It's fun to fiddle around with things, but the game takes forever because getting to the point where I can demonstrate the loop is 20 minutes, right? It's 20 minutes of me not caring what my opponent does, basically. And so in a best of 3, and this is me, somebody who's played this quite a lot, I know what the loop looks like. I generally know what all my outs are. Any new player to locals, it's going to take them 40 minutes to get into this. And then you basically have 1 game. I do think it's going to be rough. I think that eventually Echo will need to be banned. Knowing that they just revealed an Echo Legend that's blue and red does make me wonder if they're holding out on the ban because they really want this Echo to be played with that other Echo. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a great reason. So, yeah, me saying this is the loop. It's these cards. I have infinite energy and power. And now I'm just going to show you what I do with that. And it's basically just looping Renata and Heimerdinger. So you're tapping Heimerdinger to score points, playing acceleration gates to untap Heimerdinger, recycling those acceleration gates, and draw cards with Garbage Grabber. That's basically it. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, and you score all 8 points without ever going to a battlefield. So I think eventually Echo's going to have to get banned because without Echo, none of this is possible. The extra energy and power that you generate from sacking Echo in one form or another, that's the only way that this Renata works. And I get it. They want people to have opportunities at a cost to score extra points. But, you know, the fact that Heimerdinger also exists in the same color as Renata, meaning you don't even have to go to a battlefield. Yeah. Anyways, that's basically it. I'm just sort of walking you through the 8 points and getting to those 8 points. But let me know what you think about this combo. The other option, the Trinity Force, I haven't really played that much. So, and there you have it. That's the game. And that's Jayce Infinite, and it was on turn 5 exactly on cue, going first. Yeah, let me know what you think about this deck. I'm sure you all hate it. I find it fun to play Solitaire. I would be very hesitant to bring this to locals because maybe once. It's a one-trick pony at locals because other than that, I think that you would be the most annoying player at your locals playing this, even if you win, right? Like, I don't know. At a big regional, though, frankly, Lux is the better Infinite. It's just true. It just has an easier time getting through the deck. However, I would be interested to see somebody try to pilot this, you know, at larger events because of the alternate win condition of the Trinity Forces. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But it's fun. If you prefer Jayce, if you don't really care for Lux for whatever reason, give Jayce a try. But thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like it, and I'll see you in a future video.